to the ABC Podcast.
Always be cool.
The show where your hosts, DC and BK, showcase your local business and real estate pros going gangbusters in leadership, community involvement, and just being cool.
Here are your hosts, serial entrepreneurs, mortgage experts at Summit Lending, and partners in crime, Darren Copeland and Bobby Kerr.
All right, everybody, it's the Always Be Cool podcast, hanging out with your hosts, Bobby Kerr, Darren Copeland.
What's up, everyone?
Today, we've got a really, really cool guest. We're going to get right into it, Mr. Jeremy Guthrie.
All right, everyone, here we go. Born April 8th, 1979, attended Ashland High School in Oregon, where he excelled in basketball, football, and baseball, even earned the rank of Eagle Scout, pitched at Stanford University, and was a first-round pick of the Cleveland Indians back in 2002. In 2009, he played with Team USA in the World Baseball Classic. He played over a decade in the majors with 5 different teams. He had 2 starts, Bobby, for the Royals in the 2014 World Series.
Yeah.
All-around awesome guy, Jeremy Guthrie, a.k.a. JGuts. Welcome to the show, brother. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Thank you, guys. Great to be with you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Good to see your
Exactly.
face. Yeah, we haven't seen you since fantasy camp in November, so this is Happy New Year to each other.
Yeah, and even then you didn't really see our faces. You just saw our backs because we were scoring all those runs against
Oh, here we go.
All right, Jeremy Guthrie, everybody. This has been the Always Be Cool podcast.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, man. So you go ahead.
I was going to say something. So, Jeremy, I wanted to give you some props, man, because as we were doing our research that Bobby and I do, we dove in and we already knew you were smart, but we didn't know to the level of like wicked smart you are. So like I was telling Bobby earlier before the show that noticed that you were valedictorian in your high school class, but I didn't want to put that in the intro because I knew I would butcher that word valedictorian. So,
You're 2 for 2.
I know, right?
Truman grad.
Let's go, man. So, dude, wicked smart, awesome athlete, man. You just have like the whole package together.
Well, I wouldn't say I'm wicked smart, but I will work hard. And I tell kids all the time that education really opens a lot of doors. Without my good grades in high school, I don't get into Stanford. I don't get the coaching that really propels my career. And not only just the coaching, but the circumstances at Stanford, where I was surrounded by 29 of the greatest teammates I've ever had, many of which played in the major leagues afterward. One of them's a GM right now for the Phillies, and Sam Fold.
Nice.
These are great guys that just made me love baseball more than I ever had loved it before. And so it all goes back really to hard work and a goal to get good grades. And really, it is just that. If any student wants to get good grades, for the most part, any student can, because teachers always respect hard work. They always respect effort, and you really can control your grades to some extent. Now, testing is a little bit different, and I know we're going a little bit away from specialized testing, but nonetheless, so I don't consider myself a genius by any stretch, but you'd be hard pressed to find many students that worked as hard or harder than I did to try and get the A's, because those were the goals that I set out when I began my high school career, and it's led to a lot of other opportunities. So I'm grateful for that, grateful for good teachers that helped me along, and the millions of good teachers that exist today. And if you're a kid listening, work hard. You may not think school is important, and it may not relate one bit to what you want to do in life, but it all is interconnected.
That's a great message, Jeremy, because in fact, I'm going to make my 15-year-old son, Drew, listen to this, because that's what we tell him. Like, it's your job. Like right now in your season of life, it's your job to go to school. And you're right. Like, I remember I had teachers, I'm sure you did too, Bobby, like I wasn't that hot in algebra, but I tried my tail off. The teacher liked me, and every now and then I'd bring in like some donuts for the class. Sure. Right. And that helps, get the grades up there. But what a great testament and a word of encouragement for some of the kids that are out there listening to this.
Yeah, I mean, I was a public school teacher for almost 5 years, and so I totally understand that. And you're right, man. Every educator wants young people to succeed, and they will bend over backwards to make sure that happens. So that message, I'm glad we hit right off with it, because whether you're a young person listening to this or you're a parent and you're listening to this, and maybe your kid is a great athlete, but to your point, Jeremy, like without the grades in high school, then you don't get the opportunity to go to BYU. Then you don't get the opportunity to go to Stanford. Then you don't get the opportunity to play with phenomenal teammates. You don't get the exposure to play in the major leagues.
Get drafted in the first round.
Right. So all of a sudden, that entire path was laid by being a hard worker, wanting to succeed, and willing to probably take a lot of help and pointers along the way too.
Yeah, amen. Not to mention the fact that baseball is one of the toughest things you can ever try to play and be a professional at the highest level. And I always felt that having an education and feeling like there was something else in life I could do if baseball didn't work out, which for, let's say, 98% of players, it doesn't work out beyond 1 or 2 years in the major leagues. It just took away a lot of pressure, which again just makes it that much easier or facilitates one's career that much more to play in the major leagues because education was there, because I had a degree and a confidence that I could do something else if baseball didn't work out. So it's all so very valuable, and to whatever level a parent or more importantly a young man or young lady can really focus and recognize how it relates, it will only help them that much more in their life.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
Can we stay there for a second?
Yeah.
Does Major League Baseball kind of, as people do come in, whether you're playing rookie ball or you're in fall Arizona League or major leagues, does Major League Baseball kind of try to educate their young people, people that are entering into the league that like, hey, yes, this is your job, but there's also these other things, and they try to just kind of lift up. We know that the NFL has these programs to try to teach fiscal responsibility, et cetera. Does Major League Baseball do things like that?
As far as I know, I've never been involved in those programs if they do have them. So if they do, it would be a newer development. The one thing I was exposed to in 2002 when I was drafted was what they called the Rookie Career Development Program. So very much what you're talking about, kind of like this 3-day program where they took some of the top prospects. I remember Zach Greinke was at this program. And there was quite a few really, really good players, most of which are obviously retired by now. But they would talk about the importance of being well-rounded, but it was really quick. It was 3 days, and there was really no follow-up. So anything that goes on in an organization to prepare and teach players would probably be, as far as I understand, more driven by the individual organization than it would be by Major League Baseball. I think where you see it the most is language training / teaching for some of our foreign players, where they really try to help the players prepare to get American citizenship or U.S. citizenship and learn the language, knowing that is vital for their
long-term success. Yeah.
Right.
So that's what I know of right now. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but it didn't when I was coming up.
Right, and I think some teams are trying to change that, and it's probably on a team level, because maybe not across MLB, but I think Mike Sweeney and Reggie Sanders, with the Royals, I think they try to do some helping with the young and kind of guidance, if you will, with some of these young kids coming in, which is fantastic. And saying on the college topic there, JGuts, is, man, you were on some really good teams at Stanford, man. So, again, as we were looking at this, I know your battery mate was Ryan Garco, who also was in the majors, and you guys were very, very close. I believe it was 2001, if I'm not mistaken. But 2001, you guys came very close to beating Miami in the College World Series there in Omaha. Yeah,
we certainly did. I think there was a stretch, and I was right in the middle. Stanford went to the championship game, or went to the World Series 4 straight years, and I think it might have been 5 out of 6 total. The year before I arrived, they lost in the championship to LSU. My first year there, which was 2001, we lost to Miami in the championship. And then the following year, we lost to Texas in the semifinals, who eventually won the championship. So 3 consecutive years. And then the next year, they lost to Rice, which was the first best of 3 championship series.
Okay.
So 3 out of 4 years, they lost in the championship round. And all 4 years, we lost to the eventual champions.
Wow.
So Coach Marquis and 3-2, Dean Stotts, Dave Nakama, O'Brien, Obi was one of our coaches, and our pitching coach was Tom Kunis. We had the best coaching staff in the country, and we had incredible players that just, above all, they just loved the game. And that's what I think impacted me the most. It wasn't necessarily that we were the most talented, although obviously we had a ton of that as well. Mm-hmm. They just loved the game, and they were so welcoming of all the incoming freshmen. I was a transfer player, which they hadn't even had, I think, in like 10 years. Coach Marquis was not big in receiving transfers, but me and a guy named Steve Gantenbein came in as transfers that year. Thankful to them that they would even open up their minds to allow me to come, because otherwise, if they'd stuck to their policy of like, we don't do transfers. Again, my career is completely different. But What an incredible place. I consider Stanford like the happiest place on earth. It's just, and I say that from the sense of how I felt, not necessarily every student is happy. There's a lot of stress as well, but I mean, just think about perfect weather, palm trees, the most beautiful sandstone buildings ever constructed, and you have this enormous campus for 6,000 undergrad students. I feel like there's more professors than students. It's tiny.
Yeah, that's it. Wow. Yeah. Now, do you ever go back there, JGuts? Do you ever go back to visit or duck in and check on?
Less than I would have liked. I went back a couple of times when I was playing, and then I went back to graduate in 2016. That was the last time I was at campus, and I walked. I got the little tassel and the whole garb. So that was a lot of fun.
Awesome. That's
got to take my kids, and they got to watch Dad graduate from college. It only took him 19 years.
What was it about Stanford? Was it just the baseball program that made you want to go there when you were leaving BYU?
It was a combination. The education. When I came back, I had been gone for 2 years living in Spain as a missionary for my church.
That's right.
Okay.
And so I hadn't thrown a baseball in 2 years, and I'd lost 20 pounds. So I wasn't physically what I was in high school. In high school, I was a football player. I worked out diligently, really with an idea of being a college quarterback. Baseball was what kind of came into my vision much later. At the very end of my senior year, baseball was presented to me, the opportunities. And so I was someone that was in the gym a lot, working out and getting ready to be a football player in my mind. And so that's what, when I came back after Spain, I really didn't have those physical attributes any longer. And I felt like in my mind, maybe my athletic career was over. And so Stanford was extremely appealing educationally. BYU is a fantastic school as well, but Stanford is, in the top 5% in the world, we'll say. And then baseball-wise, if it was going to happen, what better place than the defending Pac-10 champions and having lost the College World Series. So I think when people say, "Why did you go?" I always counter with, "Why wouldn't I go?" Like, give me one reason you wouldn't want to go to Palo Alto and go to school at Stanford.
Right. That's amazing. So tell us about a little bit of journey. So obviously you come back from the missionary trip and you are killing it at Stanford. What was that process like? Did you know that you were going to go in the first round? Like, had some teams been talking to you? Was it the Cleveland Indians or whoever it was? But did you have a pretty good indication that you were going to go fairly high in that draft class?
So I played 2 years at Stanford. And when I returned home from Spain, there was some interest in drafting me, even though nobody had seen me, like physically, literally seen me for 2 years.
Gotcha.
And mainly that was the Blue Jays. They ended up drafting one of my teammates from BYU. His name was Mike Tejada. He was a catcher. He and I both left to go be missionaries for 2 years. And when he came home, he started his professional career. He was drafted as a missionary, essentially, and then signed a contract. I was given that same chance. I told them that I'd prefer to go to college. And so they did not draft me. But I went to Stanford. And the transition was really seamless, which I think is miraculous in and of itself. My velocity climbed up to 96, 97 within 3 months of returning home.
Wow.
I was given the first weekend against Fresno State. I pitched Saturday, game 2, and then I pitched Friday, the next 42 weekends of my college career, and was a 2-time All-American. And the second year, I was a finalist for the Golden Spikes Award, which is your baseball Heisman Award.
Yep.
But the transition was really good that way. My first year, I started out like gangbusters. I was 8-0. I beat Mark Pryor, his only loss as a junior before he was the number 2 overall pick to the Cubs was to us. We beat him 2-0 in a shutout. And everything looked really good at that point. You ask, what were teams saying? Well, at that point, at 8-0 with an ERA less than, I think, 2, I was very much on the radar again. I had a little stumbling block in the middle. I lost 4 consecutive starts, and then I won my last 5. And so I was a 3rd-round pick in 2001 by the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Oh, okay.
They did some changes that summer. They fired their general manager. I think they may have fired their scouting coordinator. And so really they didn't have as much connection to me, and therefore the offer didn't come in until the very last minute. And it didn't feel like they really were committed to me as much as an organization may have been 2 months previous before the whole change. So I chose to go back to school, chose to get back closer to graduation, chose to go back to a team that was going to return every single player. I think we lost just one starter, maybe one starter, one reliever. Everyone else came back. And so we were preseason number 1. We stayed number 1 most of the year. and that's where we lost to Texas in the regional. And that year, of course, I did pitch well. I pitched consistently throughout the year, and at that point, it was very much talked about that I would be a high draft pick, first rounder, probably, depending how well I pitched, maybe top 10 picks, but for sure a first rounder. And I ended up going number 22 to the Indians. Scott Boras was my advisor at the time, and I think that kind of limited which teams might select me, and I knew that, and I was fine with that.
Oh, gotcha.
I was selected 22 in the 2002 draft and signed with the Cleveland Indians and began my career in 2003. I didn't pitch the summer of 2002. I'd thrown so many innings, they said just rest and come back into spring training and begin your career.
Well, weren't the Indians still a pretty good organization at that time? Because I know they had some pretty good runs in the mid to 90s. Late 90s. Was like Jim Thome and Kenny Lofton, were those guys still around there in 2002?
To my recollection, I think in 2002, most of those guys may have been there. I think a lot of them were gone in spring.
Gotcha.
I didn't play with Thome. I didn't go to spring training with him. So they were transitioning. I think maybe 2001 was their last really powerful year. 2002 was a little bit of a down year for them. Guys like Charles Nagy were still with the organization, but they were transitioning. They had lost Manny. They had lost the Paul Sorrentos and the Jim Thomes and
right.
Albert Bells, and Omar Vizquel was still there. So I got a chance to play with some really incredible players. But they were transitioning. So I would have loved to have had a chance to to be a part of their run. I ended up getting released by the Indians in 2006, and they made the playoffs in 2007. So they were building up while I was in the minor league system, and they had a great run. Kind of 2007, 2008, 2009, I think they had some good success, led by Fausto Carmona, a teammate of mine.
Right.
CC Sabathia, Cliff Lee, Grady Sizemore was a teammate of mine. Victor Martinez was a teammate of mine.
Wow.
So I played with all these guys in the minor leagues that became, multi-time All-Stars and impactful players. Some of them are going to be Hall of Famers even with CC.
Nice.
It's incredible.
That's awesome.
I mean, there's some really good nuggets in there, JGuts. I mean, the fact that you went on the mission trip for the LDS church, you don't throw a baseball for 2 years because you're so focused, right, on what your calling and your job is really. And come back and pick up, and within a short amount of time, increase your velocity to get back on top, of the college baseball mountain, and then get drafted in the third round. But here's the lesson I think is important. It kind of comes full circle back to the very beginning of the podcast. Is you got drafted in the third round. Didn't really feel like maybe there was a big investment in the organization that drafted you. And you said, maybe I want to go back to a team that's together. I've got this education that I also am very excited about. And so you could kind of bet on yourself when a lot of other guys are probably saying, oh, heck yes, third round, let's go. Right. So to be able to have those options, again, full circle, because you could rely on your education, I think that undertone of that message is really important to hit home.
Well, I think it's a great message just to be, in a spot where you feel wanted. He had mentioned that he didn't really feel like maybe they were fully invested in that. But I think that goes back to your college days as well. I mean, clearly Stanford was a true home for you on the baseball side. And, we've had several people, on this podcast, and it just never ceases to amaze us. As fans, we just look at these guys, we go to games, we watch TV, and we see, you guys perform. But there's so much else behind the scenes, like, the organization, the environment that you're in, the positivity, whether you're in a good clubhouse or a bad clubhouse. It seems like you were really fortunate to be around a lot of good coaches and players along your journey as a player.
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head with that. Every organization I was with was first class, with the Kansas City Royals really being at the pinnacle of that. And so it makes a huge difference. And I think to what Bobby was saying, identifying who you are and what you stand for, that's really, I think, the most important thing for our young people is to learn that. And it comes from different sources. It comes from great parents and mentors. For many of us, it may come from our faith and our beliefs. It comes from the environment around you. But you have to know who you are. And when you know who you are, you can make decisions that help you become ultimately what you want to become. And so I never, I know I have a ton of teammates that were baseball players through and through. That is who they were. Baseball was what they did. The baseball player is who they were, and that meant everything to them. and every decision was based on that. And that's okay. And I think they've been hugely successful. There's Hall of Famers that I played with or that have played well before our time that lived this way. It wasn't for me. I recognized there were things that were more valuable, more important to me. And so baseball was never who I was. It never defined me. Mm-hmm. But I made my decisions with a different sense of who I was. And so when someone comes at me with $1.5 million and says you should sign to play professional baseball right now, yes, I think $1.5 million in professional baseball appeals to everybody. But when there are other factors that are a part of who you are and who you want to become, the process of making that decision becomes very different. And for me, that is extremely important. That's who I am. Mm-hmm. And I recognize and respect all who live in a different way or have different priorities, but it's very valuable. And it was really helpful for me and still continues to drive me, kind of my who I am and my why.
All right, so Jeremy, let's go back and touch base on that. So where did that, that confidence in your beliefs, was that passed down by your parents, or how did that come about? Because that is such a strong, background. And I know you've got, several kids, and I'm sure you've passed that along to them. But did that start with your parents back in the day?
Yeah, of course it starts with parents, right? They're the most influential people in someone's life, for good or bad. Mm-hmm. That's who you're with the majority of your young years, and hopefully through your adolescent years. Not everyone's blessed with parents, or even two parents for that matter. But for me, that's where it started. And then it was taught. It was taught to me really by, not to get too religious with you on the podcast, but it's taught to me by my belief in God and what the scriptures teach. It just continually reinforced who I was and what my destiny was. And so I spent, a good portion of my high school years studying and trying to learn and reading the Word of God to be able to try to understand who I was. And that's
I think that's fantastic, man, because, we call it your foundation, right? So you learned your foundation very, very early on with your faith, which comes with comfort and, again, allows you to make good choices, being grounded, and especially growing up in a loving family like that, having the mom and dad. So, I mean, that is just so key, to a lot of kids growing up, man. So kudos to you. And so tell us a little bit, staying on the kid thing. So current ages of your children right now.
Yeah, so Avery's a freshman at BYU in Provo. Hudson is a sophomore, 16 years old, and he's got his first playoff basketball game tonight.
Heck yeah.
He comes off the bench. He's the 6th or 7th man on most nights. And then Dash is our 12-year-old son. He loves baseball and loves golf as well. Rick. And Lucy is our little 2-year-old. So we have a 16-year gap between our oldest and our youngest. Nice. And three kids are at home here in Portland, Oregon, whereas Avery's...
hey, man, having that young one, that's keeping you on your toes, isn't it?
She's a blast. Lucy just turned 2 a couple weeks ago. Maybe the happiest, probably the happiest, I'd say easiest, but the most kind of even-keeled, always happy baby that we had out of the 4. So
that's fantastic, man. That awesome. 16-year gap, that's impressive.
Yeah, it is. My wife had 2 miscarriages, one in Kansas City at the end of our time in 16, and another one in 2019. So we definitely had desires and plans to have a 4th child. It just took us much longer than we anticipated.
Man, you're right in the middle of the season, man. I can just see the smile on your face. You're just loving every minute of this season you're in with these kids, aren't you?
I know. I can get Lucy here for the podcast. She's running around watching her couple.
That's great. Hey, talk a little bit about your time on your mission, and you spent those 2 years in Spain, right? So you're
happy to
18 to 20, or what was the age group?
Yeah, so I turned 19 years old, and I received a letter. The letter, people ask a lot of times, do you choose where you go? Every 19-year-old, now the age has changed. At 18 years old, every young man, and at 19, every young lady in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has the opportunity to go and dedicate 18 months for our ladies, 24 months for the young men, to missionary service. And the majority of the missionary service is proselyting. There are some parts of the world where you spend a lot more of it doing service projects. But generally speaking, when a missionary leaves for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, it is proselyting, meaning it's sharing beliefs and conversing and teaching people to come in contact with. So I left at 19 years old. That assignment is given to you by a group of leaders in Salt Lake City, including what we believe is a prophet. and they are prayerful about the assignments. They learn a little bit about you as much as you can in an application, if you will. And they prayerfully seek to assign you where they feel inspired to assign you. And so I was assigned to Spain. I lived in the northern part of Spain. Bilbao was kind of our hub city, so they call it the Spain Bilbao mission. There are over 300 missions in the world. I later was a missionary with my wife and family in the Texas Houston South mission. We did that from 18 to 2021. But you go and it changes a little bit as to how it's organized. But at the time I was there, you only had communication with your family weekly by letter and twice a year by phone.
Wow.
In today's day and age, you actually are allowed to make a phone call each week on one day that's designated as your preparation day. And that phone call can even be a video call. And so there is much more connection now between the missionaries who leave home and their families versus when I was there. I really appreciated the disconnect, and I'm not as much of a homebody as a lot of people are anyway. So maybe I was like you. You went to college. It wasn't like I was calling my mom and dad every day to say. And so for me, it wasn't a big change. But there are many of us, right? Like my daughter calls and talks to my wife almost every single day, and they have a really great relationship like that. So I left. I took Spanish lessons in a training center in Provo, Utah, for about a month and a half. And then I was sent to Spain, and you show up there and you're given right away, you're given a trainer. And so someone who presumably knows the language, hopefully knows the lay of the land and how to kind of operate, although that doesn't always work out perfectly. But in my case, my trainer was from Sweden, and he had been in Spain for almost 2 full years. And so totally comfortable. He helped me learn the language. He helped me kind of understand the work. Our job was very, very consistent. Wake up every morning at 7, eat breakfast, shower. By 8 o'clock, we should be studying together as companions. And then we would do a personal study. And that study would include Spanish, but mostly centered on, learning the gospel of Jesus Christ. And at 10 o'clock, we were out the door. We'd go and talk to people. We'd do our visits. We would do service, whatever it entailed that day. 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock was our lunch window. And then from 4 o'clock until 10 p.m., back out serving, teaching, or talking to people, trying to find new people.
So you guys were on the go nonstop then, right, JGuts? Yeah.
Nonstop. It's extremely busy. You have meetings, every 3 or 4 weeks you'll have a get together with other missionaries and have a large conference and be taught by your leader. But yeah, it's a lot of self-motivated, driven time, and you have to find that endurance and that desire, that want and will to go out and do something. It's really hard. In my first 2 weeks, I got thrown in a little jail cell because I didn't have my passport on me, and I happened to talk to a police officer who was off duty. And I asked him something about Jesus, and he said, "Where's your passport?"
Wow.
And 5 minutes later, I'm in a little holding cell.
And you spent how long there?
Just a few hours.
Gotcha.
I left my passport with the office, and they were trying to help me get a residency card. And so I had a copy of it, but the guy said he was having a bad day, I think. And so he said, "You know what? Come with me. You crazy Americans, come over here. Not only that are you American, but you're also a missionary." Like, he's like, "Get out of my life." And so he was upset with me. And so the work is really, really challenging that way, but it's so fulfilling. So fulfilling to really dig deep down inside and ask yourself, why am I doing this? Do I really believe this? Is this really important to me? And above all, to really feel and experience the strength that comes from a higher power, and to know that they can help you do all things. And I see Bryce Harper; he always has that scripture, Philippians 4:13. In Christ, He gives me the strength to do all things. And so, I think about that often. And I recognize that during those 2 years, I learned how to get strength that just wasn't my own, because I was really good at creating my own strength as a young man. Literally and figuratively, right? Like I worked, whether it was hard in the gym or hard in school, I could see the results of my hard work manifest to me in the universe. Like if I worked hard in the gym, I got bigger, faster, stronger, and performed better. If I studied more, I got better grades. But this work in Spain didn't return the same things. And this is where I learned an important lesson. I could work as hard as I want. I could be as happy as I wanted. I could be as smiley as I wanted. I could do all the things that were asked of me. But that wasn't going to make the random police officer in the afternoon that was having a bad day receive me with a smile. And it didn't mean that people were going to say, yeah, geez, I've been waiting for you to come to my house. Why don't you come right in and tell us some of the beliefs? I want to hear your message. In fact, it rarely, if ever, led to that during my 2 years and my experience in Spain. And so you had a goal, but your measure of success couldn't be based off the results of that goal that you had. So I wanted to find and help bless people and bring them greater joy to their life. That was my goal. But my success was never going to be measured in how many people did I help, because if it did, it would have destroyed me. I would have spent 2 years and countless hours preparing and trying to engage people. And I'd say in reality, Mercedes and Arturo were the only two that ever really welcomed us in with open arms and had a sincere desire to learn and listen to what we were sharing. There were others, of course, that you spent a couple of days with, but in terms of like a sustained relationship, there was two people. And so if I measured my success by how many people listened to the message and we saw changes in their lives for the better through it, I would have been a huge failure. But that wasn't the way that I learned to measure. So that lesson learned of what is true success became really vital, because fast forward a few years and I'm in the minor leagues and I'm terrible in my stats. I have a 7 ERA and I'm a former first round draft pick that's already a wash or a failure, a bust, if you will. I had to go into my inputs. What am I doing to prepare to be the best I'm capable of becoming? Am I successful even though the world and my organization is telling me that I'm not? And can I still find the drive because I understand what true success is and I'm willing to be patient and just take whatever outcome comes? I learned that in Spain, probably to the highest level I would have ever learned it. And so when you talk about a baseball career, again, just like education was a part of it, my training, my service in Spain as a missionary became absolutely vital to my survival as a professional baseball player.
Right, because what it really does, number one, it helps build character, but also just the mental fortitude that you developed and over in Spain and got stronger with that, because and touch base a little bit on that, because there's got to be a little bit of pressure, being a first round draft pick and going through the minor leagues, and as we all know, there's nothing harder in life than to hit a round ball with a round bat, much less pitch a round ball like you were doing and coming through. So tell us a little bit about those struggles, coming back and going through the minor leagues before you really made it up into the majors.
Before we get there, I'll ask, I appreciate you asking about Spain, and I go back to Spain almost every year. In fact, if you look around my office here, most of what I'm looking at is Spanish related, from my Spanish bowl to my Camino de Santiago, kind of, I don't know what you want to call this,
right?
But I have a lot of others. So I appreciate you asking. I love Spain. If you haven't been to Spain, just as a visitor,
it's beautiful.
Hey, could you maybe lead a group of fantasy campers and be the tour guide when we go over there?
I won't even get into it, but ironic you say that. I just got back from a trip, and I have multiple people asking me, will you take us on a trip and be our tour guide in Spain? Cool. So I do consider myself like a Spanish tour guide in many ways. But any questions you have, Bobby, about Spain?
Yeah, I don't want to gloss over that. Yeah. So number one, yes, thank you for speaking on that. Personally, I wanted to hear about it. I was baptized in the LDS church, and so I grew up there, very, very immersed in it. At one point thought I would be on a mission trip if I got older. We were out of the church by the time that I rolled around to be that age. But I think for a lot of people, it doesn't matter if you're Mormon or whatever religion you are, we're all exposed to missionaries, right? Whether it's knocking on the door. And so I think kind of peeling the curtain back a little bit to see the inside perspective of someone that is a public figure who went through that. And, the part that I wanted to touch on is it doesn't matter if it's about religion or your personal code, whatever it is, doing something because you have you're striving for a greater power, whether it's religion or you have some type of motivation for your family or your career goals, whatever it is, having something that's bigger than yourself in terms of a personal goal, I think is so important. That's kind of, it sounds like that's what set you up for success there, was that you were not measuring yourself by conversions or just how many people have I affected, because I mean, it's a long game, right? You're talking about you're trying to change the course of their life. So I think it's really cool to kind of peel the curtain back and see that side of things, because all of us, or most of us, are familiar a little bit with the missionary, lifestyle.
Yeah,
so thank you.
Right. And having that experience for 2 years, clearly, most of us don't have that experience to go overseas and do it. I mean, what an opportunity to, it's almost like you are forced to grow up, come into your own a little bit. You're not around mom and dad anymore. And to go experience and meet new friends and try to help people with their faith over there. And so here's another important question regarding Spain. What's your favorite food when you go over there?
First of all, you can't eat better than you do in Spain. You really? And people ask, what is Spanish food? And the first disclaimer is it's not Mexican. You're not going to find, although ironically, when I went back to Spain in September, for the first time ever in Spain, I saw Mexican restaurants, and there was quite a few of them. And that's kind of the whole new age that we're in, that everyone knows everything about everyone else because of social media. So when I was there, if you said taco, most people didn't know what a taco was. And if they did happen to know what it was, they certainly had no interest in eating it. So what is Spanish food? It's normal. It is what it is. It's like, if you're in the middle of the country, it's a lot of meat. If you're on the coast, it's a lot of seafood. Now you get deeper inside of that. What are some of the famous dishes? I love paella, and I love it to have the seafood, which is the traditional one. They have a ton of soups. I love this soup called La Fabada Asturiana. Every region has its own kind of cuisine and its own soup. If you're in Madrid, there's the caldo that you can have. If you're on the East Coast, there's a soup called maybe it's a caldo gallego as well. But nonetheless, everything's very regional. So things I love the fabada asturiana. It's a big white bean soup, kind of a white liquid. And it has a couple of pieces of meat in it, like a big chorizo or maybe a big piece of bacon in there, and some potatoes. That thing is off the charts amazing. Nice. I just love Spanish chorizo. I love it's almost like it's on a vine. It's about this thick. It's like jerky, which is not normal. It's very American of me to do it that way, but that's the way I like it. I love their octopus. Their pulpo a la gallega, which is Gallegan octopus. It just has oil. If you go to a restaurant and have octopus, usually it's prepared similar to the way they do it in Spain, but it's got a little paprika, a little salt and pepper on olive oil, and it's grilled. And that might be my absolute favorite, is the octopus.
Hey, got fired up talking about the food.
Now I'm fired up. So here's another question on that, Jeremy, because so my sister-in-law is from Venezuela, and she had a Venezuelan restaurant here in downtown Lee Summit, Missouri. And the Venezuelan guys, like Salvi and Escobar and some of the other ones that we've had over the years, they would specifically go there because, she made the way that they make it back in Venezuela, right? So, you spend a lot of time here in Kansas City. Is there like a specific spot that served decent Spanish food? Because Bobby and I know, would be all over it. But did you have a go-to spot that you could get some of your Spanish flair here?
There was one, and I think it still exists, but I never ended up going there. It's in downtown. It's right on the edge of downtown. You know what it is by chance? Okay. They never did. I wouldn't give them.
No idea.
We'll look it up.
Yeah, we'll look it up.
They never invited me over. I'm just joking. But
hey, I totally get the whole Spanish and Mexican thing, because my wife is part Mexican, and don't you dare call it's something Spanish or Latin American food. Don't call it Mexican food. I mean, they get kind of weird about that stuff.
But they're generally speaking, it is hard to find good traditional Spanish food in the United States. It always, because I think when it's just pure Spanish, they feel like they don't get as many customers. I think there is kind of a divider there, and so they always have a fusion, or maybe they have one or two dishes that are Spanish, and then the rest is maybe something else. I remember Chicago had a couple that I enjoyed. New York City had a great one called Toledo. I don't know if it's still open or not, but Toledo was a really good one. but overall, it's disappointing. I just need to go to Spain, which is why I go so often, because I can get the real stuff there. And the funny thing was, in the old days, every restaurant in Spain is like pretty much Spanish. Like they don't do restaurants. They don't have Italian restaurants. They don't. I mean, in big cities, you'll see them a little bit more often. And now in this day and age, you see it a lot more often. But when I lived there, like you didn't see other restaurants. It just was, every restaurant was Spanish. It was all a Spanish bar or a Spanish restaurant. And you didn't even, there was no other food you could eat there. Maybe a Burger King or a McDonald's. That was it.
Yeah.
They were not.
I didn't remember seeing, I went to Spain, went to Barcelona, but I went to Rome as well, and it seemed like Rome was very similar. Like pretty much all the places that are right in the heart of Rome, you're not finding a Mexican restaurant, right? It's
I love
straight
it. They're like, you know what? This is our food.
Yeah.
This is our country. Like, don't even bring your other cuisines into our house. This is our house.
Exactly. I love. They stick to their culture, which is phenomenal.
So let's talk a little bit of baseball. So you mentioned the World Baseball Classic right when we started, and did we talk about that? Or was that just? Yeah, you mentioned that you played in 2009. Talk about that experience, a little bit, because you represented the USA, correct?
Yeah.
But you had the opportunity to represent another nation if you wanted to.
If I would have played close enough to my time in Spain, I actually had a residency card. I think that would have got me on the Spanish team. But they didn't even have a team back then. Now the Spanish team is pretty decent, loaded with a lot of Cuban and Venezuelan players. I was there in Germany back in must have been October, maybe September, for the WBC qualifier. And so I watched the Czech Republic and I watched Britain qualify. Nice. They upset Spain, and maybe Germany was favored to advance out of that group. Great baseball, though. So if you haven't watched the World Baseball Classic, get ready for some exciting games always with the teams that you're more accustomed to seeing. But there are a lot of newcomers this year with Britain and Czech Republic who have qualified for the first time, and they play a really good brand of baseball. I was very impressed with the Czech team especially. They're one of the few teams that has no Americans. There's no American, but their mom was Czech or their great-grandfather was Czech. They're like legit Czech, born and raised. There's a couple that played in the United States. One played at South Carolina, a good shortstop. But for the most part, they're Czech. And so they're fun to watch. They play different. Their style's a little bit different.
Because they're not professionals. So it's like watching like the hearts of kids. Like it's like watching kids out there play, right? Like I saw an interview that one of those Czech players did, and they were like, we're really not supposed to be here. We're just having the time of our life. We're playing against big leaguers. Like we're just here having a great time.
They're very much like, that same passion that you see in the Little League World Series.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. They love the game. They're there to play it. They recognize that it's a blessing and an opportunity. And, my experience in the World Baseball Classic, it caught me by surprise. I just completed my second year in the big leagues going into 2009. And I got a call from USA Baseball asking if I'd be willing to pitch. And so I joined a starting staff, that is, of Jake Peavy, Roy Oswalt, and Ted Lilly. And
nice.
I was honored to be a part of that team. I probably didn't deserve to be on that team. You look around and you see Derek Jeter, Chipper Jones, our two Hall of Famers, and maybe some future Hall of Famers in a David Wright or a Dustin Pedroia. But it was a real honor. I'd never played USA Baseball at any level before. And so, to represent the country really did mean something. They talked to us a lot about that, what it meant to wear USA across your chest, and to honor and respect and represent our country well in that regard. And then, of course, we represented our individual organizations and ourselves. And so it was just fun. I think I just pitched in 2 games. Both were against Venezuela. And I didn't pitch particularly well. But my memories are being in the clubhouse or at dinner with Derek Jeter and Chipper Jones. I remember in Toronto.
Wow.
We played our first round in Toronto. Italy, Canada, and Venezuela were there. And, BJ says, let's go to dinner. Who wants to go to dinner? So a few guys said, yeah, well, let's go to dinner. And so we walk out of the hotel in Toronto. And, I've walked out of a lot of hotels in my big league career, and not once has anyone really cared to follow us or take a picture of us, maybe an autograph from time to time.
Right.
I felt like we were on the red carpet, and we had paparazzi. They took a ton of pictures of us, asked Derek Jeter a bunch of questions. Maybe someone else got a hello. We walked across the street. They followed us. They sat outside the restaurant. They took pictures through the window of the restaurant and followed us back to the hotel. So, you got a little flavor of that Yankee lifestyle, of that superstar.
Right? Because that was probably just a walk in the park for Jeter. He was completely used to it.
He was probably pleased with how minimal the following was that evening. But, you play for the Royals, and no disrespect to us or my teammates, but we're not coming out of the hotel drawing cameras and following. We're just good dudes that come out and sign an autograph or two and get on the bus and say, see you at the ballpark. And, Jeter's having to deal with this. So that was a great experience. Our biggest game, we beat Puerto Rico. We were down 1 run, I think, maybe 2, but 1 for sure in the 9th inning. And we hit a walk-off. David Wright hit a walk-off single to advance us to the final round against Japan. And,
nice.
You had guys celebrating in the clubhouse like they had won the World Series.
That's cool.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I was excited.
Hey, JGuts, who was your guys' manager on that 09 team?
It was Davey Johnson.
Oh, okay.
That was a real blast to the past because my favorite team growing up was the New York Mets. The first team I remember seeing in the World Series was the Mets. I loved Darryl Strawberry with his cool batting stance and his bombs that he would hit. I loved David Cohn, obviously a Kansas City guy himself.
Right.
To have Davey Johnson as our manager, I very much remember Davey Johnson as the manager of that Mets team. So that was kind of fun.
What a great experience, man. And you dropped a name earlier on that team, Jake Peavy. So 2014 World Series, did you match up against Jake Peavy or were you guys different games?
I matched up against Tim Hudson both times.
Okay.
So no Peavy. Hudson and I both pitched game 3, and I think we actually set a record for the oldest cumulative age of a starting game 7-0. I think he was.
That's awesome.
He might have been 39 or 40, and I was 37.
Okay.
So we set that record having pitched against each other. But
wow,
Peavy was fantastic. Right. You learned a lot about intensity and the kind of competitor he was. He threw a bullpen day 1 for the WBC in Toronto, or we were in Dunedin, Florida. And he's screaming at himself because the first pitch wasn't where he wanted it to be. I mean, it was amazing. Like talking to himself, Jake, let's go. What are we doing here? Like screaming at himself on pitch 1 of a bullpen that, was relatively insignificant.
Right.
Well, to this day, it probably didn't matter a whole bunch, but that's what made him so great was every pitch mattered to him.
He's just intense, man.
Yeah.
He's just an intense guy.
Yeah.
Can you believe it's been 10 years, more than 10 years since you came over to Kansas City? Over a decade.
Has it been? Because, I came over in 12, so it's been No, it goes super fast. I mean, we'll be having like a 25-year anniversary of the World Series team before you even blink again.
Right.
Hopefully we get some other ones in between there.
Yeah, no, it goes so fast. And, it goes fast when you're in it as well. So to really appreciate it as a challenge, if I look back on my career, I wish if I could do something different, it would certainly be more time with teammates even and just really getting to know them. So, it goes by so fast. If I could do something different in my career, if I could relive it, things I would do is I think I'd invest way more time with teammates and just getting to know them, not just being with them and hanging out and having fun, but really getting to know their story. Just simply asking that question, like, what's your story? Tell me, like, you grew up in Venezuela, Dominican. You just took it for granted. Like, you'd ask them a few surface questions a lot to times. And I wish I just was more invested into who they were and what made them great, what made them the type of player that could be in the major league clubhouse with such great guys. And then I think really savoring each moment. Right? It's really easy to just be in it and think it's going to last forever. It's easy to like blow people off, whether it's a fan or a coach or just a moment in general, and just take it for granted. And you do that because you want to act like you've been there before, but at the same time, you may never go back there. And so it's that nice blend of, like I'm not overwhelmed by the moment, but I appreciate every second of it. And I think I got closer to that in the 14 and 15 World Series. I think 15 was unique because coming off of 14, I was in it, right? And so enjoying it was possible, but I had to be very focused and ready to pitch game 3 and game 7. 2015, I was not on the roster, the active roster. So I was just a big cheerleader in the dugout. And so, I could really absorb every moment of it. I could sit back without any pressure and just watch what's happening. I can go out and, I remember meeting Andy Grammer, who sang the national anthem, I think, in game 1, and just having a discussion with him before the game in the tunnel. Before game 4 in New York City, I had a friend up in the stands. So I walked up in full uniform up to the upper deck and just went and said hi to him. And people look at you in the upper deck 45 minutes before the game, assume like you're a super fan, like you're Bobby Kerr at a Royals game in April in uniform.
Right.
Like,
Right. Because they probably never thought it was the real JGuts up there, right?
But people figured out eventually, a couple of people, and they say, are you Jeremy? Can we take a picture? And that's just, that was fun. It's to give someone a moment like that and to share it. And I think that's ultimately what, what is one of those. If a player could go back and look at it, I think each of them would say, wow, I wish I could really absorb the moment even more, because once it's gone, you're living off memories, and you're living off, in this day and age, at least you have a lot more video you can live off of and watch it. But it's never the same as when you're standing on the grass or on the dirt and just looking around and saying, this is my life, and this is pretty amazing.
So, Jeremy, what was the feeling like? You come over a few years, a couple of years before 14 and 15, and I think, was it Jonathan Sanchez trade? Yeah. You come over here. What was the thought process? You're coming to Kansas City. I don't know if you knew anyone in the clubhouse or not, but what was that like transitioning from? I believe it was it the Rockies at the time? Coming from the Rockies, coming to Kansas City to a fairly decent team. Did you have a feeling that, man, Kansas City's kind of on the upswing over here?
Well, number one, I had such a bad year in Colorado, and I felt bad because they had traded for me and given up, two really solid pitchers, and Jason Hamill and Matt Lindstrom. Matt was a teammate on the WBC team. So the Rockies had made a trade and had me start opening day in 12, and I won that game, and I didn't pitch very well the rest of my time there. In fact, I pitched really, really bad most of it. But so I felt terrible. They had invested in me, they had believed in me, and I had failed them in many ways. So leaving Colorado, I was, I guess, sad in the sense that I didn't fulfill my part of my contract. Maybe excited in the sense that I had a new opportunity, a new life, when I very much didn't deserve one. And I think, from what I gather, Sanchez was kind of in the exact same boat going the other direction. Someone that had been traded for and then had a bad experience. So we were passing in the night in almost the exact same circumstance. As I recall, the Royals were trying to avoid losing 100 games in 2012 when I got over. So I'm not sure how much hope or optimism there necessarily was generally, but for the real true fan, they know that was the middle of developing some really, really important Royal players, and Slavi and Moose to the whole bit, Haas and Kane and Escobar and everyone else along, not to forget anyone, but maybe if you were a really true, deep, engaged fan, you knew that things were hopefully going that way. But if you were just looking from the outside, it wasn't like I showed up and said, wow, I got traded to the Yankees. We're going to the playoffs next. This is great.
Right.
But I didn't.
I'm going to go to back-to-back.
I didn't care either. At the same time, I had never even been on a team that had a winning record. That was my seventh full season or sixth full season, and never had I been on a team that had won more games than they'd lost. So certainly that wasn't my expectation. That was my hope and my dream. But even when I got to the World Series, people said, "Is this your dream?" I said, "I don't even know that I dreamed big enough to think I would ever play or pitch in a World Series. I played baseball because I enjoyed it. I loved throwing things personally. I just wanted to throw things, footballs, baseball, no matter what I had, I just wanted to throw it. And so I played baseball because I loved sports and I loved being active and I loved throwing things, not because I wanted to be in the World Series or thought that I would strike somebody out or hit a home run in the World Series. So being in Kansas City, I just was grateful that I could continue to throw things, essentially, because in Colorado, my days throwing things were becoming really, really limited. In fact, I was throwing a lot more than baseball in Colorado. I was throwing helmets and jerseys and I was going to be throwing things. They just weren't going to be the right spheres any longer. So coming to Kansas City, I was just grateful and happy to be around good people. I remember those who welcomed me. The front office were just fantastic. Dave Island expressed a lot of appreciation and confidence in me. He said, "Jeremy, I tried to trade for you. when I watched you pitch, and I was with the Yankees, and I would have never imagined people watching me would have thought I was good enough to pitch for their team. I just kind of had that, try to do what I can do, but never looked at myself as, an all-star or any level of pitcher that someone would want. And so to hear him say that gave me a lot of comfort to know that he cared and he had put his 2 cents into acquiring me prior to that happening. And obviously from there, I pitched well that first year, and other guys kind of turned the corner, and then they made a big trade that made a big difference for our organization in 13, 14, and 15.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So a baseball question for you, Jeremy. Can you really tell the difference between, let's say you're on the mound, you give up a fly ball in Colorado, and you're like, oh, yeah, the left fielder's going to catch this, and then it goes out by 100 feet, for a home run. And then you throw, a ball in Kansas City. Can you really tell that big of a difference with the elevation as a pitcher?
Well, yeah, you can. You give up enough home runs. I think I gave up 199 of them, or maybe 200. I'm not sure if it's 199 or 299.
Yeah,
I know it's.
We don't even look at those stats, bro. We don't even check for that.
You give up enough of them, when
right?
Like you just know. I tell this story all the time. In 15, I would have been the first person, had I publicly said it, I think, to say I think the balls are different. And I think that was Rob's first year as the
commissioner.
But I was convinced in 15 that the ball was different, and not because I pitched bad, but because balls that I had seen go to the warning track for 10 years were suddenly going over the fence. And I don't know if there's any science to prove it, but later Verlander and others made the same accusation, and Major League Baseball pretty much admitted to it. At some point, they changed the ball, and so I felt like 15 was that way for me. But yes, as a pitcher, you give up enough hits, you start to recognize, that's probably a home run, or that's fringy. But there were a number of those hits in Colorado where you're like, oh, okay, no worries, that's an out, and it did go over the fence. And so it's obviously it wears on you, and it's can be mentally taxing when you think making a good pitch or the pitch you want or getting a missed hit that you're hoping for still ends up in a bad result. You start trying too hard, trying to make better pitches, be more perfect, which only leads to more and more problems.
That's good stuff, man.
That's awesome stuff.
For sure. Man, so real quick, we had a couple guys ask some questions of us to ask you. So number one, are you going to be coming back to Royals Fantasy Camp?
Oh, 100%. I'm already throwing. I've been throwing since Royals Fantasy Camp.
Yes.
I hit 88.7 on the Rapsodo gun a couple weeks ago.
Nice.
So I'm coming for you guys. I want to throw full on.
That'd be fun.
Hey, so, Jeremy, do you remember? Do you remember this? There was a part that Bobby and I may or may not have gotten in trouble one morning for going out for some early batting practice, and then I remember we were playing your team, and I think you said, "Hey, Copeland, wow, that batting practice didn't do very much good." And then the next pitch, crack. Those are the things that just make fantasy camp so much fun. For those who listen, they understand. But man, we had so much fun with you coming last year. You were just like one of the guys in the clubhouse, and you could just tell by the smile on your face that you were just genuinely having a great time hanging out with the guys. And it's just literally, for Bobby and I, it's like the best week of the year, which is fantastic, man. So we absolutely hope you keep coming back, man, because you were just such a pleasure to have around.
Well, you guys make it work, right? Without the great fans and the players that come out and play, it doesn't exist. So if you don't even know what fantasy camp is, I assume all your listeners do. But 1 week a year, the Royals open it up to just a select few. What is it? 100 players?
Yep, 100 people.
Right,
yeah,
100?
Yep.
You sign up and you pay and you come out and you get to play baseball on the spring training fields in Arizona, and you get to do it with Hall of Famers George Brett, guys like Mike Sweeney, and a number of other Royals. And this was my first year being invited as a former player. And so we throw light batting practice to the teams as they hit. We help coach, and we just get to be a part of fantasy camp, living out the fantasy of all these players that may have not got a chance to play professional baseball. So,
right. That would be an understatement that we did not have the chance to make it.
We all appreciate you very much calling us players.
Yes.
I'm not saying – I love how he paused. He said, we're 100 players come out instead of 100 fat, old, out-of-shape guys.
It's more like the first 100 that put their credit cards down.
No, these guys are crazy. They got to understand. So I pitched to my I pitched to my own team part of the games, and the format. I don't have to get into the details, but the first game I pitched this year, I was getting razzed by the opposing team because my own players were not getting hits off me. Oh, look at JGuts is blowing them away. Can't throw the strike that they hit. He's throwing it too hard. This, that, and the other. Blah 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 blah. By the last game, I'm getting accused of being too hittable by the opposing. Well, this isn't fair. JGuts throws it here, and they hit it every time because we averaged, I think, maybe 10 runs a game the last 5-6 games. And so I said 3 days ago, you said it was an unfair advantage because I was worse for my team. Now I'm too good for my team. I said, which one is it? So you get a lot of that. You get a lot of old dudes out there.
Yeah.
Nothing
bitching and complaining.
Yeah, if they're not winning, they got problems. But I love it. And my goal this year, obviously, is to give more players a chance to hit off of a Major League fastball. I can't call my Major League fastball that any longer, 6 years removed. But if they can see a 90-mile-an-hour fastball and try to hit it, I think that might be the ultimate fantasy. So hoping to give us that chance.
That was really cool.
Yeah, you're still shoving, man. You're still shoving it.
You still got it.
Well, here's a plug for you. I'm going to pitch against the Savannah Bananas.
What?
March 11th, and it'll be televised / recorded, I think, on ESPN Plus.
Okay.
March 11th in Savannah. I think I only get 1 inning, so I'm going to have to really let it shine in that 3-out period, and hopefully I get 3 outs. I guess I can't take that for granted.
Right. That's a big assumption.
Yeah. So I'll pitch March 11th. If my arm is still attached to my body, I'm anticipated to pitch 2 more times. And so I'm on a team just retired Major League Baseball players. I don't know exactly who's on the team. I'm just going to show up. I think John Buck, who was also at Fantasy. Buck will be a part of the team. But check us out on ESPN Plus or in Savannah if you want to come to the actual game, although I think they're sold out.
That's awesome.
They're sold out for like the next 10 years. But
yeah.
Right. So where does the game take place? I should know this, but is it in Savannah?
In Savannah. They have an old ballpark that used to be one of the affiliated ballparks. And went over the last 4 years and make it quite the experience, right? They do a parade before the game, and the players welcome everyone that comes. They go in the stands between innings and chat with the fans. So yeah, it's supposed to be a great time.
That's fantastic.
Cool.
That's
Hey,
then in the Royals in that game.
Awesome.
Yes, represent.
Hey, before we jump off here, you want to talk a little bit about custom cleats?
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, so we need to get custom cleats. I was thinking about that the other day with my team in fantasy camp was called the Purple Rain. So shout out to the Purple Rain. Get your umbrellas out because it's always
here we go.
A chance of big showers and bombs with the Purple Rain.
There we go.
What place did we get? Did we get second or third? I don't remember how we finished.
I wasn't first.
It wasn't.
If you're not first, you're last. But
right.
So we got last place next to Bobby Kerr's team.
No.
We're at least 1 or 2 notches above.
Fifth.
Yeah, we got fifth.
That's all right.
But I invested back a few years ago into custom cleats. And custom cleats, if you just go to the website, it's called CustomCleats.com. We take ordinary sneakers of your choice, and we grind out the front part and the back part of the shoe without damaging the aerosol or anything else, the actual shoe itself. And then we glue on with a really proprietary glue that never fails. We glue a cleat bottom onto your shoe. And so any shoe you want to perform on a field with, whether that's softball, men's league softball, baseball, we have a number of major league players that wear our product, college players, high school, all the way down to little league. Golf bottoms, if you want to put those on. Even cleated bottoms like for football. We've had Terrell Suggs for the Baltimore Ravens wore our product for a number of games way back then. And you just put cleats on any shoe. And so whatever level of comfort you have in that shoe, if that's your favorite shoe, the way it looks, the way it feels, you can just put cleats on the bottom for $170. It gets sent to us. We cleat them up, send them back to you. And now you have a pair of whatever cleats you want.
Yeah. That's awesome.
We need to get the fantasy camp outfitted in custom.
Yes, straight up. You need to remind us. We should send out the link to all the guys.
Yeah, if we're going to have bad swings, at least we need to look better.
That's
right.
Exactly. Might as well look good.
You got to look the part. You got to look the part.
I got a pair of LeBron 2s that will go really well with the City Connect uniforms. I just got them.
Yeah.
Really?
Oh, they're beautiful.
Yeah, next time we do the show, we'll have to dive into more of Jeremy Guthrie,
Yes.
the sneakerhead.
I was just thinking that.
'Cause we could talk, I'm sure, for another hour.
Yeah.
You could talk for an hour about it.
We didn't go down that rabbit hole today.
Yes, Jeremy, because I thought about that, but I know you have to leave within the next 2 hours, so we will save that if you'll be gracious enough to come back and hang out with us sometime again. We'd love to talk about the shoe collection and how you can call Nike and they'll make you a pair of shoes on the spot.
Amen. Yeah, we start talking sneakers. This will go from a podcast to the Truman Show, 24/7 live feed. So good call. Good call on the no shoes.
Yeah, I knew where that would go.
Yep.
Very cool.
That's awesome, man.
All right. Hey, everybody. This has been the Always Be Cool podcast with your hosts, Bobby Kerr, Darren Copeland, and today's really, really special guest, Jeremy Guthrie. Be sure to subscribe and leave a 5-star review of the show wherever you listen to your podcast, and find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Always Be Cool Podcast. Guys, Jeremy Guthrie in the house.
Thanks
Take
for
care.
joining, everyone.
Bobby,
See ya.
it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
If you are hearing this message, you've listened to the entire episode. And for that, Darren and Bobby thank you from the bottom of their hearts.
They hope you enjoyed this new episode. And if you did, please leave them a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you're listening. Please share this episode with others who may be interested in our community.
Also, feel free to let DC and BK know which business or community leaders you'd like to see covered in future episodes. Get in touch in the comments or on social media. See you next time for a new episode. And remember, always be cool.
This podcast is powered by Summit Lending, NMLS number 1850081, Equal Housing Lender.